past symposiums were focused on social housing. One of the things that there were a few things unique about the symposiums, I think. We had breakout sessions that gave a good personal way of getting to know the speakers and ask very important questions for your facilities and what the work you were doing. We always also had behind the scenes tours. And the past couple of years, the conference was held in Beltsville, Maryland at USDA's National Agricultural Library. And so we had behind the scenes tours of the National Zoo. Last year, we actually were in the elephant facility as one of the examples of a place that we visited. And this year we had plans to get to know some of the research projects and labs at the USDA's Agricultural Research Service. Of course, there was a change in plan, but maybe we'll be able to get back and have that opportunity next year. CAAT yesterday also mentioned that we've always made an effort to make some of the presentations available from these conferences, and they are on the National Agricultural Library's website. You can find them by going to USDA's NAL's website and looking for the word social housing, or you can come straight through the AWIC link, and you can access all of the videos from the first 6 years, and eventually some of the videos from the talks given this year will also be in that list. All right, so one other reminder, if you have questions for our panelists, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to get started with our first session this morning. And we are continuing on. Our first session is going to be some more informative talks on the topic of best data from design to publish. Our first speaker this morning, some of you met yesterday, is Professor Adrian Smith. And Adrian is secretary to the Norwegian Consensus Platform for the 3 Rs, which is also called NORECOPA. Some of you are probably familiar with NORECOPA. Actually, I'm sure most of you are. Adrian is a British veterinarian who graduated from Cambridge University in 1979 and spent most of his career as the chair in laboratory animal science at the Norwegian School of Veterinary Medicine. He has been the secretary of NORECOPA since it was established in 2007. Adrian has a special interest in 3R's resources, and he has co-authored several databases that are available through the NORECOPA website and freely searchable to anyone with an internet connection. And Adrian is also the lead author of the PREPARE guidelines, and we heard about the PREPARE guidelines yesterday afternoon. So they're useful for planning animal experiments. And Adrian, I think you could start sharing your slides. Today he is here this morning to talk about the Refinement Wiki and International Culture of Care Network. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Christina. Let me just see. Now, is that working okay for you?
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much for that warm introduction and the invitation to speak. It's a great pleasure. I have had a lot of good contact with both CAAT and AWIC over the years, not least starting many years ago with contact with Tim Allen at AWIC, who unfortunately isn't with us any longer, who helped us collect resources for one of the databases, which I'll be talking about later today. And collaboration with Christina as well, and AWIC to also embed a lot of bibliographic references from the National Agricultural Library into our website. So it's a great pleasure to be here again. I have quite a lot of slides again today, but not as many per minute as yesterday. So to make it easy for everybody again, I've put them out on the web as a PDF file, which you can download, excuse me, at that simple address you can see on the screen now, norecopa.no/CAAT-2. And just to remind you, or for those who weren't here yesterday, the prepare guidelines, which are a very central part of what I'm going to be talking about today, are also available. Sorry, the PDF of my presentation about prepare is also available at the URL norecopa.no/CAAT-1. And my email address is on the screen. Do please feel free to contact me afterwards if you have questions or comments. NORECOPA, as I said yesterday, is Norway's 3R center. It's a consensus platform. But although we're tucked away in a corner of Europe, we make a point of collecting global 3R resources and putting them out on our website. We're called NORECOPA because we're a member of ECOPA, which is the European Consensus Platform for Alternatives, which was established in 2000. And ECOPA recognizes any national consensus platform that has all the 4 major stakeholders in its governing body. That's representatives for government, research, industry, and animal welfare. So our aim is to help scientists prepare for better science, whether it be with animals or not. So we're not a pure animal welfare organization. We're not a pure scientists association. We try and aim for consensus with all the 4 parties to drive the 3Rs forwards and to reduce the disagreement between these 4, or potential disagreement between these 4 parties. This was the website which I mentioned yesterday. We'll be going into some parts of it today. I'll be talking first of all about culture of care, which you'll find under the main menu heading of more resources. We'll also be talking about the Refinement WIKI that we started this year. I'll be mentioning briefly some of the databases and guidelines we produced, and also talking briefly about what we've done towards severity classification. The website has been well received. It's been used in most countries in the world now, and thought you might like to see that the US and Canada are right up at the top of that list. So we're glad to see this is appreciated on your side of the Atlantic as well. So to talk about culture of care first, it may sound rather an abstract term, and it means maybe different things to different people. But we formed an international culture of care network to try and get a handle on this. That is hosted, or its website is available at NORECOPA's website. We host the network's website, which is norecopa.no/COC, and most of the text and resources I'll be showing is either taken from the network's publications or from publications produced by the European Commission. So in short, it's a demonstrable commitment throughout the establishment to improve animal welfare, scientific quality, the care of staff, and to give transparency for all stakeholders. And it's important to emphasize that animal welfare and scientific quality go hand in hand. It's true that happy animals give better science. And a culture of care takes us beyond simply complying with the law itself. It's actually in Europe anchored in the EU Directive 2010/63. You may know that the directive itself, the text of the law, is preceded by a set of what they call recitals, which are explanatory text explaining the principles that are embedded in the actual legal text itself. And recital 31 says that breeders, suppliers, and users should have an animal welfare body to advise on animal welfare issues. And one of the things they should do is to foster what this recital calls is a climate of care. Elsewhere in the directive, they call it a culture of care, but these two things are identical. And the EU Commission has produced a lot of guidance documents to help scientists and animal facilities implement the requirements in the directive, these have been approved by the member states, and there is one document, for example, on animal welfare bodies and national committees. And here it says that fostering a culture of care is in everybody's interest to promote improved animal welfare, enhance scientific outcomes, and give all those involved in the establishment confidence. This is an important part of culture of care. Here are also some quotes from this document. We're talking about shared responsibility, but note that this is to be done without loss of individual responsibility. We're to be proactive towards improving standards, not just reacting to problems when they arise, but trying to look ahead and avoid potential problems. And it's all about effective communication, and in that communication, a no blame culture, so that everybody from the lowliest animal carer feels that they have the confidence and the ability to communicate their concerns up through the hierarchy. And it also says that this culture should permeate all levels of the establishment, and to make sure that happens, it's really essential that the senior staff are on board, that they take a lead and they demonstrate their commitment to a good culture of care. And they should acknowledge and appreciate the efforts that the staff are making. The Commission has also produced other guidance documents, for example, one on how to inspect facilities, how to enforce the regulations, and also one on an education and training framework. And there is further advice on fostering a culture of care in these documents as well. And I put all the references in this slide if you want to look at these in more detail. So we can, in a way, sum up what it says in the directive and the recital and the guidance documents in these 5 points. We encourage scientists to work with and value the contribution of the animal technologists and care staff. That's really important. I mentioned that yesterday in connection with the PREPARE guidelines. That we make sure that there is ongoing involvement of the project license holders in the animal welfare body, that these talk together. They're not seen as separate entities. And we should provide the opportunity and encouragement for any staff member to raise issues and attend the animal welfare body meetings. Communication with all staff, spreading word about the 3 hours, about how to improve welfare, about any policy changes, the roles of the care staff, so everybody understands their role in the system, and the training systems for all the personnel, the veterinarians and the animal welfare body itself. And to provide information on the role and functions of this animal welfare body for new staff, and make sure that they are brought up to speed very quickly, and they understand that even then, though they're new, they can contribute to this culture of care and they can raise their concerns. Because as you know very well, it's often people coming in with a fresh view on things who have valuable contributions, who see things in a new light. I believe Barack Obama said once that the people he listened most to were those who disagreed with him. And I think that's a good starting point as well, that we have a climate where people can air their disagreements in a positive and constructive manner to promote a culture of care and better science and better animal welfare. Yesterday, you'll remember, for those who were with us, I talked briefly about an analogy between the space shuttle program and the unfortunate accidents that occurred, and the way in which we use complex animals, rather like complex machines, in our science, where we unwittingly are faced with known unknowns or even unknown unknowns, where there may be potential design weaknesses, a pressure to publish, the temptation to make bad management decisions using a protocol that we've got away with and managed to publish before, even if it's not the best, and how often it's a combination of many factors, each of which may be harmless until they occur simultaneously. So no issue is too insignificant to be considered. And it was particularly in the case of the Challenger disaster, when it was flown at temperatures that were originally considered to be too low by the manufacturers of the solid rocket boosters, where we saw a disagreement between management and those who had produced the rocket and felt that it was too cold to fly. So we need a culture of care to air these concerns, air possible design weaknesses, if you like, in our experiments, avoid pressure to launch, and avoid the temptation to take shortcuts or use protocols which are suboptimal. Now, the International Culture of Care Network, which I mentioned, is due to the efforts of one person, Thomas Bertelsen, who we see here receiving the Danish 3R Centre's 3R Prize last year. He's a veterinarian at Novo Nordisk in Copenhagen, and he proposed that we should establish an international culture of care network to try and get to grips with this concept and provide practical ways of implementing the culture of care and making a website where we could publish methods for furthering the culture of care. And so a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about from now on has been either produced by Thomas or is a result of his efforts. The network itself draws together people from all walks of life within the laboratory animal community, regulators, animal welfare organization members, members of animal welfare bodies, and other stakeholders. At present, there are 39 members in 17 countries. And we've just established a new file sharing platform with a new email address to make it easier for us to communicate within this group. And we're just starting 3 subgroups to look in more detail at the themes you can see here on the right-hand side. Penny Hawkins and the staff of the Research Animals Department at the RSPCA in the UK, that's the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, has also been very active in promoting a culture of care and working with this network. And she and her group, the RSPCA, have made this very nice graphic of communication and a culture of care, where they emphasize that effective two-way communication is essential. And they give some suggestions here for how this can be achieved. The orange box, regular meetings between scientists, technologists, vets, managers, and members of what they call the AWIC in the UK, which is the Animal Welfare and Ethical Review Body, and regular refresher meetings. And then special events, what they call duo talks, that's researchers talking about their science and animal technologists talking about their techniques and animal care. So we get good dialogue between the people looking after the animals and the people who are using them for science. Then there is also suggestions within building communication, that each study has a pre-start meeting and what they call a wash-up meeting afterwards involving everybody. And that 3R improvements that have been identified are reported to the animal welfare body and shared also at external user meetings. Other ideas include what they call a boxless event, an event where anybody can submit ideas to improve practice in advance to 3 Rs, whether they belong to a specific subject at the meeting or not. And staff surveys to ask, let staff anonymously answer questions like, are we listening to each other's ideas about animal welfare? Is the communication functioning? Some other methods of recognition of a culture of care include awarding 3R prizes, like the one Thomas Bertelsen won last year in Denmark. NORECOPA has an annual 3R prize of about $3,000 and a diploma. And we have a website promoting all those who've won it, of course. And within that box, you'll see also at the bottom links to 3R prizes that are awarded by other institutions. Other things that can be done are newsletters emphasizing advances within 3Rs. These can also be internal to help the company or the institution feel this culture of care. Events and awards for technicians are really important. There is nothing nicer than watching a technician swell of pride as he or she presents a poster describing a new technique or refinement which they've developed in their institution. It gives them a tremendous boost of confidence. And also public pledges from the company, transparency to the outside world is really important. Penny Hopkins and Thomas Bertelsen have recently published this concept paper in the journal Animals about objective indicators to help assess whether there is a culture of care. You can read these later in my files, PDF file, but here are some indicators, if you like, you can use to see whether the institution really does have an effective culture of care. Things like low turnover of staff, regular visits from the attending veterinarian, the existence of species-specific information and access to it from all staff members, etc. The RSPCA has also made a nice poster giving real-life examples and practical advice. I've just touched on most of the issues there, but you might like to download that poster. And Thomas and Penny have also made this rather nice graphic as well, where they highlight the outcome, supporting structures, and the way we think and what we do. And the supporting structures can be things like a 3R prize. They can be nominating the caretaker of the month. They are, of course, the user establishment policies and the standard operating procedures and the instructions, all the guidance that you need to run the unit, the work of the animal welfare bodies, and 3R initiatives. And you put all these together, and this builds this house which gives optimal animal welfare and helps a culture of care pervade the whole establishment. The RSPCA have also made a summary of links to documents that we use in connection with promoting a culture of care, and I give you the link at the bottom of this slide here. So if you want to look for further information on the way we're doing it in Europe, you'll find those documents of interest. But obviously there's a lot happening abroad as well. I'm not so familiar with the US system, but I've seen this nice paper about establishing a culture of care, where it's emphasized that this relies heavily on the establishment of an effective program of self-monitoring and building of trust with the oversight bodies, which in your case are the USDA, the Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare, and AWIC for those who are accredited. And I noticed in that paper they had this quote saying that let's regulate ourselves, or someone with a .gov address will do it for us. So, but hopefully most of the work to establish a culture of care will be about carrots rather than sticks. This is a win-win situation for everybody. We shouldn't have to feel pressure to establish a good culture of care. Marilyn Brown has also created this flow diagram showing how you can train new staff to in the principles of a culture of care. And in New Zealand, they have this nice document as well, a guide for people working with animals. Susanna Looimis, who is the policy officer in the European Commission working on the EU directive, has made the important point that a culture of challenge is very closely related to a culture of care. I said that if people have the confidence that they can be heard without being blamed, then they will also be able to challenge existing routines or policies which they disagree with. And this is all about looking for what's acceptable rather than just choosing the accepted. We're back to the space shuttle analogy again. And alarm bells should ring if you hear people making comments like, well, we've always done it that way. Or, well, we do it as often as is necessary. So it's all about the story of the emperor's new clothes, which I hope you know in the US and Canada as well as we do here in Europe, asking the obvious questions which other people may be reluctant to mention for various reasons. And yesterday I also mentioned the 3 S's from Carol Newton. She was an American biomathematician who went to a symposium in Washington in 1976, I believe it was. Unfortunately, she never wrote a paper about the 3 S's, which is why Penny Hawkins and I wrote a paper ourselves. You'll find a link to it in this address here on our website. But she is reported to have said, she didn't actually say this herself, but in the proceedings from the symposium, she was reported to have said that in addition to good science, we must also use good sense, which I interpret as common sense, and good sensibilities. That's using our heart as well as our head, so that if we assume that animals will feel the same pain and discomfort as we would in a given situation, we must give them the benefit of the doubt and refine the situations to reduce or hopefully eliminate the pain and suffering. I also found a couple of infographics while I was preparing this, which I thought I'd share with you. This is actually from Microsoft. It's all about being human at work, and a lot of the stuff inside this infographic is really stuff that could have been taken straight out of a culture of care. It's all about things like giving credit where credit is due, looking at everyone equally at meetings, when giving feedback, pausing to consider if you're expressing stereotypes, making meetings more inclusive, acknowledging your team, etc. So you might like to have a look at that. And recently, because of the COVID-19 situation, I've been looking for resources to help people who are suffering under the restrictions caused by the pandemic. And I found this going home checklist, which was produced by the National Health Service in the UK, not specifically because of the virus, but generally to help tired health personnel to avoid them getting compassion fatigue. But it's a going home checklist. Take a moment to think about today, acknowledge something that was difficult and let it go. Consider 3 things that went well. And in the culture of care connection, we should be communicating these to other people to improve the sense of confidence that we are working for the 3 R's. Checking on our colleagues and asking ourselves, are we okay? And if we're not, making sure that we get the support we need. And when we do go home, switching off. leave your job with your coat in the wardrobe before you leave. To finish off the subject of culture of care, I made this set of possible items that encompass the theory of a culture of care that match the letters themselves. I don't know if you want me to go through it all in detail. It's all about commitment, it's about undertaking training, banning lip service, it's about transparency, understanding the need for individual responsibility, the right to challenge the way things are done, the need for education about alternatives, being on the ball, being proactive, finding the time needed, because it will take time to work with some of the items we've just been discussing that can be used to promote a culture of care. Concerns should be aired without any consequences for the person. We should be awarding good initiatives, and we should seek good interaction between researchers and the staff to encourage research integrity and quality, and making sure that everybody, not least from leadership and downwards, is willing to implement a culture of care. So if you would like to join this network, we'd be very happy to have you on board, and you'll find details about how to do that on the Culture of Care website. And I'd like to tell you a bit about the Refinement Wiki that we've just started. The address is at the top, wiki.norecopa.no. This idea was born from the knowledge that a lot of good ideas about refinement, they are discussed in discussion forums on the net, but often they never get published, either because people don't have the time, or they assume other people have done it before, or that it's not sufficient to warrant a full scientific paper. So what we hope is that this wiki will be used by people who have a good idea, or a good reference, or an idea for a way of improving a procedure or situation, that they can quickly add it to the wiki, and it will become more visible, and people can add to that information within the wiki. So it's designed to be a portal for rapid publication and dissemination of ideas. It's also a place where you can identify experts on specific refinement techniques. So if you're planning a multi-lab study within refinement, then this should be a place where you might be able to find a collaborator. And can also be used as a bulletin board where colleagues can share their experiences or develop new strategies. As you can see on the left, it looks very like Wikipedia. It's built with slightly different technology, but the principle is exactly the same. We want all bona fide members of the research community on board, but you won't be able to create pages or edit pages unless you're logged in as a registered user. So that way we can make sure that this wiki isn't abused by people who are opposed to animal research. But the contents, on the other hand, are not curated by NORECOPA, so they're responsibility of the registered user. But we were concerned about the security of these registered users, so we've made anonymous usernames like this one here. You may be able to guess who the person is from the initials, but most people won't be able to do that, and the rest of the username is the date in which that person joined the wiki. There's also a talk page for every user, so you can go to the person's talk page, and you can leave comments or questions there, which they'll pick up next time they come in, or if they've turned it on, they'll get an email alerting them to the fact that something has been posted. We started this just before Christmas, and we spent several months just building the wiki and test driving it, and not least making a simple set of instructions, because the software came with a fairly complicated instruction manual written by computer nerds, and it was way over the heads of what we needed. And at the moment, there are only 26 registered users. And as I said, we spent a lot of time making a simple instruction manual, so you don't need special skills to contribute to it. And here's one of the pages from the wiki. At the bottom here, you can see that this has been edited by somebody called KH 1912-19. It's not Catherine Herman, just so you know. It's somebody else from Europe. But you can see to the right of this person's username, it says talk, and you can then leave a message to this person if you want to comment on this page, if you're not a registered user. If you're a registered user, you can go straight in and you can edit the content, and you can show that it was you who's edited that content. And if you click on the star at any stage, you come back to the main page. There isn't a sort of standard type of table of contents, because that's not how a wiki works. But on the main page, there is a link to all the pages that have been created. And so far, we only have these pages. So it's going a bit slowly. We launched the wiki the same week as the lockdown started in most countries in Europe, which was really bad timing. We thought we'd launch in March so that we would have a lot of entries in the wiki before the World Congress in Maastricht in August. So that was our timeline at that stage, but of course that's been postponed as well. So we now have good time before next year's World Congress to really build this up, and we hope people, as they start getting to grips with the pandemic, will have more time to add stuff to the wiki. So it can help to highlight new refinements. This is a refinement of blood sampling that was developed in Oslo many years ago now. It wasn't particularly well highlighted, to put it mildly, when it was developed. It was published in the materials and methods section of this paper, in one sentence saying blood samples were taken from the lateral saphenous vein, which didn't actually help to highlight this refinement. So when we discovered that this wasn't becoming particularly well known, we then wrote this paper instead and published that in the European Laboratory Animal Journal, and for about 15 years it was the third most cited paper in that journal. So my message to young students is, if you do make a refinement, make sure it gets out there and is visible, that it's indexed by the big bibliographic databases. Doesn't have to be in a high impact journal. And it's really important that the title and abstract mention the 3R advancement, because these are usually the only parts that are indexed by the databases. I nearly fell into that trap myself. Not so long ago, I was a co-author of a paper developing a new method of experimental design for toxicity studies, and this was our working title for the paper, until I realized we'd forgotten one of the most important messages in this paper, and that was that we were dramatically reducing the number of animals that were needed. So we put those words into the title. It's easily done, easily forgotten. So just a few words about the PREPARE guidelines again. Yesterday I pointed out that the 3 R's really do permeate this checklist. And I think we have to make sure that scientists are aware of the importance of this, and how happy animals make better science. Refinement is a win-win situation for the science as well. And here are the 2 pages of the new ARRIVE guidelines. This is the essential list and this is the recommended list. And unfortunately, there aren't many direct references to issues that immediately associated with the 3 R's. Not in the abstract either, as I just mentioned, which is really important for the indexing of papers. So I hope that people will find that both prepare and arrive have their place in the development of a protocol and the final publication of papers about the science. Just very briefly now, as time's running out, I want to give a bit of time for this questions. I mentioned a few of the other resources on our website. NORECOPA's website is just one database, but originally it was split up into several smaller ones. The 3R guide was the one I mentioned earlier. The early work was a collaboration with AWIC. It's an overview of about 300 guidelines for planning animal research. NORENA is an overview of audiovisual aids, about 3,000 resources that can be used either as alternatives or supplements to the use of animals in education and training, right the way from junior school to university, and it includes dissection alternatives. And we get a lot of hits from US schools who are looking for alternatives to animal dissections. TextBase contains information on about 1,600 textbooks within lab animal science and related topics. The NAL database is the National Agricultural Library collection of literature references, which I mentioned earlier. And then we have 2 inventories produced by the European Commission, which we've embedded in our site. And yesterday we heard a presentation about a 3rd inventory that's being developed, and I hope that will also be embedded in our site eventually. This is one item from one of the EU Commission's data sets, and as you can see on the right here, we have a lot of filters, so it's quite easy to narrow your search to ones that are interesting for your area or your country. We also have a meetings calendar, which we've expanded to be a webinar and meetings calendar, and we update this continuously, basically several times every week, and it's a global overview of events, and there are a lot of webinars now because of COVID-19, and I hope you'll find this useful. We've also had a lot of meetings ourselves over the years on the species on the left-hand side, and I've made a table of links to the PDF files from these presentations. There are about 80 presentations altogether, and I've grouped them into general presentations, ones about animals in field research, farm animals, and fish in research. So you might like to have a look at some of those. We also had a workshop not long ago about homemade educational materials. There are a lot of very creative veterinarians now and technicians producing education materials that can be used instead of animals in early training, both of students and animal technicians. And we have a website for that. And I just mentioned that this is a supplement to the NORENA database, which has commercially available audiovisual aids. These are some of the resources from the NORENA database. Recently, we've also made a page with resources for home learning during the pandemic, particularly within anatomy, biology, and physiology and pharmacology, for people who want to use resources that you can download or from the internet as an app or use online. Most of them are for free. We've also produced quite a lot of guidance. This is a report from a working group that NORECOPA convened some years ago now about severity classification of procedures involving fish, because we felt that the EU document was rather focused on traditional lab animals, so we needed one for fish as well. And we've also written statements on topics like the ones on the right-hand side here, which you can read on our website. Last year, we produced a compilation of severity classification systems. In Europe, all procedures have to be classified either as mild, moderate, or severe. So a group of us made a compilation divided into this set, as you can see here, different interventions, induction diseases, with issues within pharmacology, housing, etc. And so if you click, for example, on the one about substance administration, you get here an overview of 3 different classification systems, the EU directive system, the UK Home Office, and the Swiss system. And you can see what they classify either as non-harmful, that's below the threshold, or mild, moderate, and severe. So this helps people in Europe who have to classify their procedures within this system, mild, moderate, and severe, both before the procedure is performed and retrospectively. It gives you an idea of what the systems that are in existence think about different procedures. We also have an interactive map showing the European 3R centers. We are part of a network of European centers, and it's occurred to me that it would be nice if there was a similar interactive map of 3R centers in the US and Canada. I don't know if anybody's working with this. It would be nice to hear from you if it already exists, or if somebody's interested in collaborating on that. We produce a newsletter, as I mentioned yesterday, 7 or 8 times a year in English. It has a lot of international subscribers, and you'll find a link on the bottom right-hand corner of every page on the NoreCopa site where you can subscribe to that. So to finish, I'd just like to say that our aim is to try and build bridges between scientists and the lab animal community. And I rather like this quote from the American pastor saying, coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. And that's all I hope we're contributing to. And I'd like to finish by thanking our main sponsors again for money to perform these tasks, to remind you of the address where this presentation is available and the presentation from yesterday. And here you can see the link at the bottom right of all our pages where you can subscribe to our newsletter. So that was what I had to say. We have 10 minutes left, hopefully, for some discussion.
Thank you, Adrian. Great talk, lots of information, and NoreCopa always is a great resource for finding this information. We do have a few questions that have come in. The first is, are there any innovative ways you've heard of people fostering a culture of care during this pandemic? I think you talked a little bit about a culture of care during the pandemic, but have you heard of other ways? Specifically, they asked for essential animal technical staff that may, where institutions may have ramped down their research program.
Yeah, if you look at that list that was produced in the UK, they'll get some ideas from that. In the UK, they go out and clap in the streets every Thursday. Have you heard about that? To applaud the health workers. I think people are doing similar things within the laboratory animal units themselves. It's just not quite as visible. But any form of recognition, whether it's some extra food, bringing some pizzas, or just show how important these people are, any form of symbolic act, I think is really great. And that's the sort of thing that's being done at the moment. I think it's also, this pandemic is ironically helping the community to appreciate the value of animal care staff and the scientists who are using the animals, because they realize that we need a vaccine. So, and that's only going to come through developing and validating it on animals. So I think it's actually helped to improve the communication between the animal research community and people at large. So we have I think particularly once people started publicizing the new alternative methods we have for non-animal methods now, people are realizing that scientists themselves are working hard to replace animal experiments. There's a lot of concern even within scientists that animal research is not robust, it's not valid, it's not translatable. So they realize that we're not as defensive about it as we were, say, 20 or 30 years ago when ACOPA was started. So ACOPA was started because there was so much aggression from the animal rights movement towards the lab animal community.
All right, thanks, Adrian. Another question. We have recently formed a committee to assess our local culture of care. The aim is first to grade our culture of care, to then implement actions to improve it, and then repeat the process annually or biannually. Culture is difficult to assess, especially in terms of empirical data. Would you have any suggestions on how to assess a university culture of care? Yeah. Things like art surveys or uptake of 3 R's techniques, things like that.
Sure. Can you still see my screen or not?
No.
No, okay.
Share it again. You can share again.
I'm just going back to a slide where I've really hopefully answered that question. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Yes. Let me see. I'm not very good at working fast with this share screen.
There you go.
Can you see that screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This paper, which has just recently been published by Penny Hawkins and Thomas Bertelsen, gives objective indicators. And I think this is probably an answer to this question, isn't it? Here are some specific indicators of whether the culture of care is working or not.
Right. Yes. Yep. Have you heard of specific institutions using things like surveys?
Yes, I think we have some information about that on the Culture of Care website. There are certainly people doing it informally and not necessarily publishing it, but using that to gauge the effectiveness of their efforts within their institution. But the important thing is not to publish it, really. It's just to make sure it's working within your own institution.
Right.
I personally found it very interesting to think about a culture of care when I worked at a facility that was planning to be accredited by AWIC. I just want to say that I have absolutely no connections to AWIC whatsoever, so that I'm not biased in any way, but I like the idea of accreditation, and I like their template for writing a program description. And when we were deciding whether to apply for AWIC accreditation or not, we made a big point of involving all the technicians and saying, you know, do you want to be part of this? It's going to improve things, but we need your help as well. And we got them on board, and that really helped drive forward this culture of care, because everybody felt that they were part of the process of improving standards. So I think to have some higher target or goal, like, for example, renewed accreditation is a really good idea. And yesterday I showed this circle of quality assurance. It's really actually an upward spiral. So I used to say to technicians, you know, do you remember how we used to anesthetize rabbits 3 years ago? Look how much better we're doing it today. And maybe we can do it even better next year. And that's the sort of attitude we're trying to get. Be proactive and let them be part of this race to improve welfare, because it will give them a better feeling of belonging to the community.
And I think that is directly related actually to one of the final questions we have time for this morning, which is about having champions at facilities that are carrying out you know, these culture of care ideas. I think what you were just talking about is inspiring to really have somebody at a facility that recognizes these opportunities and changes over 3 years. So the question was specifically, can you speak about the importance about having those champions or advocates to carry these culture of care ideas forward within an institution and the Animal Care and Use Committee?
I certainly think it's an advantage if you utilize people who are especially enthusiastic about it. What you must avoid is envy and jealousy, that technicians who feel they're doing a really good job don't feel they're getting rewarded for it, and that some other guy is getting all the praise and all the attention. So having a 3R award, for example, can be a bit of a two-edged sword. You have to think whether it would fit in your community or how to do it. Maybe you should have several awards, or maybe you should just have a gathering where each technician or group of technicians can present a poster of what they're doing, and that there's no sort of one winner. You have to apply a bit of psychology here, so that one part doesn't feel that they're losing out. On the other hand, if you have a good culture in the community, then they may accept the fact that there is a friendly competition, and that somebody is going to end up with the main prize. You have to be very careful the way you tackle that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for your time yesterday and today. And
thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I couldn't come. I was really looking forward to the trip. So it was a great shame that it had to be cancelled.
Right. It's been a different type of a year for so many of us in so many ways, but we're really grateful that you were able to join us, and that so many of you actually are able to join us too. It's been really exciting.
As for me too.
Oh. Okay.